Iran election, Hassan Rouhani on course for second term. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani is on course for a second term in office, preliminary results show. Out of 26 million votes counted so far, he has won 14.6 million, or more than half, officials announced on state TV. Mr. Rouhani's main challenger lodged complaints about alleged voting irregularities in the polls. Ebrahim Raisi accused supporters of Mr. Rouhani of hundreds of acts of propaganda at voting booths, which are banned under electoral law. Mr. Raisi, 56, is a conservative cleric with a background in the judicial system. Reuters reported that Mr. Rouhani was on course to win more than 50% of the vote in this first round, thus avoiding a second-round runoff. Hassan Rouhani, President of Iran. In his election campaign for a second term in office, he promised a moderate, modern and outward-looking Iran, in sharp contrast to the vision his rival Ebrahim Raisi, a hardline senior cleric and judge, had put forward. He warned Iranians that a single wrong decision by the future president could engulf the country in war. This was a reference to Mr. Raisi, who was not overly impressed by the nuclear deal President Rouhani reached with world powers, a deal which removed a serious threat of war hanging over the country. President Rouhani is keen to see the nuclear deal survive, even though U.S. President Donald Trump and opponents of the deal in the United States Congress are looking for ways to put further pressure on Iran, or even scrap the deal. Mr. Rouhani also promised to revive the sluggish economy, to extend individual and political freedoms, to steer the country away from the extremist ideas of the hardliners, to ensure equality for men and women, to extend access to internet and generally work for moderations and an outward-looking Iran. Nuclear negotiator Hassan Rouhani has been a key player in Iran's political life since the revolution in 1979. He was an influential figure in Iran's defense establishment during the 1988 Iran-Iraq War and subsequently held several important political posts. From 1989 to 2005, Mr. Rouhani was Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, SNSC, the top decision-making body in Iran, appointed by and answerable to the Supreme Leader. He served as Deputy Speaker of Parliament between 1996 and 2000, while simultaneously completing a thesis on Sharia, Islamic law, as a postgraduate student at Glasgow Caledonian University, and in 1997 became a member of the Expediency Council, the highest arbitration body on issues of legislation. Mr. Rouhani was Iran's chief nuclear negotiator from 2003 to 2005, earning the moniker the Diplomat Sheikh, when he agreed to suspend uranium enrichment. He resigned from the SNSC and from his role leading the nuclear talks just weeks after the election of the combative Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, amid sharp differences with the new president. First term. When Mr. Rouhani stood as a presidential candidate in 2013, he knew he was up against an establishment stacked with hardliners who were highly suspicious of him. His campaign slogan "Moderation and Prudence" resonated with many Iranians who had seen their living standards, and their country's reputation, plummet under President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Although he was seen as part of the establishment, Mr. Rouhani promised to relieve sanctions, improve civil rights and restore the dignity of the nation, and drew large crowds on the campaign trail. Many believe he was not the first choice of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. But seeing that he might offer a way to end the nuclear confrontation with big world powers without destabilizing the whole system, Mr. Khamenei backed Mr. Rouhani. Within weeks of taking office in 2013, Mr. Rouhani spoke on the phone to U.S. President Barack Obama, the first direct contact at the highest level between Iran and the U.S. since the 1979 revolution. The conversation paved the way for historic open and direct talks between Iran and the U.S., as well as with other world powers. After assuming office himself in 2013, Mr. Rouhani got the supreme leader to allow the foreign ministry, rather than the SNSC, to take charge of nuclear negotiations with the West, and appointed his foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, to lead the talks. The sight of Mr. Zarif and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry taking a stroll around Lake Geneva just outside the venue of nuclear talks, chatting and joking together, would once have seemed extraordinary. But as the negotiations progressed, it became almost commonplace. Challenges ahead. From the outset, Mr. Rouhani had cautioned that there would be no overnight solutions to Iran's many problems. The nuclear deal ensured that many sanctions against Iran were lifted, but the benefits of this have been slow in coming for many Iranians. Ordinary Iranians say they have not felt it in their day-to-day lives. The economy remains sluggish, and desperately needed foreign investment has been far slower than had been expected. Mr. Rouhani had pledged to help free reformist opposition leaders, held without trial since 2011, but the hardliners have stood firm and they remain under house arrest. He also promised to usher in an era of more freedoms in a country where human rights abuses are rife. However, few believe there has been much improvement here, and in some areas the situation may have worsened. There are still many journalists and opposition activists in gaol, and the number of executions carried out in Iran has soared. Censorship in the media has not eased under Mr. Rouhani, although in one of his key speeches as president he told state media chiefs that Islam could tolerate a lot more than state TV allows its viewers. Iran's internet also remains tightly controlled, forcing many to use proxy servers to circumvent the restrictions in a country whose internet speeds rank among the lowest in the world. Voting time was extended by 5 hours, until midnight, amid an unexpectedly high turnout of about 70%. The Interior Ministry said more than 40 million votes had been cast. Election officials said the extensions to voting hours were due to requests and the enthusiastic participation of people. Mr. Rouhani, 68, promised a moderate vision and outward-looking Iran while campaigning for re-election, and tied his success to the success of the nuclear deal brokered between Iran, the U.S. and other countries in 2015. U.S. President Donald Trump is opposed to the deal, which eased sanctions on the Middle Eastern country, but his White House renewed it earlier this week. Final results are expected to be announced at 1400 hours local time, 09:30 GMT, according to election official Ali Asghramadi.